This is Lucien Greaves from the Satanic Temple and Satanic Planet, and you're listening to the Dan Chan Show on Hard Rock Hell Radio.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I've been looking forward to this chat. So much to talk about. You are the co-founder and spokesperson of the Satanic Temple, and now huge movement, a graduate of Harvard and now a rock star. Firstly, how are you and how have things been over the past year?
Oh, past year I haven't been anywhere. I stayed on lockdown pretty extreme, more extreme than anybody else I know. I didn't mingle with people at all.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I have a tendency to go recluse anyways, so that was all a bit easier for me.
Does that go with the territory with you, or are you a people person?
I'm not a crowded area of people person. I really love meeting up with a few friends at a time. I've always hated crowds.
Yeah, but you're good in them, though. You can handle them.
You know, I found that I don't mind being on the stage, which is weird because at the beginning when we first founded the Satanic Temple and I was doing the lectures, the media and stuff like that, I was terrified of the idea of going on the stage and delivering the talks and all of that. But once I got used to it, I found that that's the easy part. You know, being on the stage, performing or whatever, that's the easy part. Mingling with people afterwards and everything, that was the part that's difficult for me. And now, you know, making the transition to doing live music shows, I don't think it'll be that bad.
No, we'll get to that. I mean, so primarily you're here to discuss your new musical project, Satanic Planet, featuring Luke Henshaw, Justin Pearson, and one good thing to come out of the pandemic, so I believe, the inclusion of none other than my favourite drummer. As a drummer, he is my favourite. It's Dave Lombardo. Who started the idea and how did it come about?
Well, I was in the UK for the documentary Hail Satan, which is about the founding of the Satanic Temple, and I'm pretty much the primary subject in that film. And I was there for the London Sundance, and as part of the press tour, I was speaking to some metal magazine, and they were asking me about what some of my favorite music is. And one of the bands I gave a shout out to is Dead Cross, which has vocals by Mike Patton from Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, Justin Pearson playing bass and doing backup vocals, and Dave Lombardo, of course, doing drums. And this interview apparently caught Mike Patton's attention, who showed it to everybody else. And then Justin Pearson reached out to me, asked if I would be on a podcast he does with Luke Henshaw, who he has a band with, Planet B. And so they flew out to Salem and hung out with me at the Satanic Temple headquarters. They recorded their podcast and everything. And somewhere during that, Justin mentioned something about would I be interested in working on some kind of project. And at the time, nobody even had a clear idea of what it was. But, you know, why not? You know, creative project, let's do it. And then it kind of settled on this idea where we would do some kind of spoken word album, you know, covering the topics that we get into with the Satanic Temple or some of the rituals or whatever, just kind of an audio exploration of the Satanic Temple. And then we set aside some studio time in San Diego, and I went over there and we ended up working on music instead. You know, there's only like one spoken word track now on the Satanic Planet album, and it's called Passage, and that's fairly musical as well, actually.
I mean, the debut album is out now. Was this all put together during the pandemic, or was it just before that?
It was just before that. I literally went from recording in the studio, flying back to Boston, and just in locking down immediately. And we actually had our first shows planned to play live in late March of 2020. I think our first show was supposed to be like March 22nd in Tucson. And it became clear that show wasn't going to happen. But as far as I know, that show is still just delayed. I don't know if it's actually been canceled, and I don't know what the situation is with that. But now people are talking about touring again, but I still just don't really know
when it'll happen. And how was the recording process? Was it fun? I'm seeing like megaphones being used and some unusual soundscapes. How did it all happen? I know Dave got involved quite heavily with that, didn't he?
Well, Dave kind of got involved in this first album after the fact. We're working on a second one now. I'm going to work with him in the creation process.
Yeah.
But it was just we did it. I can't. I haven't worked with a number of bands on a number of musical projects, but the way we worked seemed a bit idiosyncratic. Like I said, we went in there really not knowing exactly what we were working on, not even clear that we were going to work on a music project, but we had pulled a bunch of samples and things like that and had been exchanging sound files. And then I was just kind of writing these lyrics in real time and texting the lyrics to Luke and Justin. Then we go in the sound booth. And sometimes I'd write these lyrics, plugging them in with the cadence of the music and stuff like that. And then just be trying to think, I don't know what kind of voice is appropriate for this and stuff like that. And we just kind of experiment in real time. That's why, whip out things like the megaphone and, try other tactics and just seeing how it all settled together. And a lot of that was really experimental and gratifying because, before we put that stuff together, we didn't really have a sense of how my voice contrasted against Justin's and things like that. So it was interesting to hear it come together.
I mean, the themes, you've just touched upon, obviously, the Satanic Temple themes, but were the words and lyrics easy to come by for you?
They were once I kind of settled on a topic or a mood or whatever. And especially for this first album, there was particular things I wanted to say, like Grey Faction. I really wanted a Grey Faction track on there. The Satanic Temple has this Grey Faction campaign where we push back against satanic panic conspiracy theories and particularly fight back against recovered memory therapies that, therapists hypnotize people and get them to confabulate these delusions of satanic ritual abuse and stuff like that. And it's a real problem in the mental health field, the propagation of conspiracy theories and everything. And I wanted to kind of, talk about that in song form anyway, the multiple ways you can get a message out so it's meaningful to people.
Yeah.
Helps the cause and to have some kind of emotive quality to it sometimes means more than a 2-hour lecture to people.
Of course.
So it was, so there was a lot of that going on. But by the time I came back to Boston and went into lockdown, we were already working on things that just deviated from raw, straightforward themes related to campaigns in the Satanic Temple and stuff like that. And that's just, that just kind of has a horror theme to it. This idea of something unseen creeping up on us that's, going to do great harm or whatever. And you can hear the influence of the pandemic in those kinds of lyrics too.
Yeah.
But, it was a real kind of transition for us because it was one track we did entirely remotely. And it was also the track that broke us out of any type of preachy efforts to highlight the campaigns of the Satanic Temple.
I get it. And sound-wise, it's got a kind of industrial sound. I mean, I know you said some kind of some medieval. There's always kind of weird things going on. Did you know what you wanted to create when you got together? And how would you describe Satanic Planet's music? Because it's totally uneasy listening in a good way.
Yeah, and I've described it as easy listening for the apocalypse. And
that's right. Yeah,
I don't really like to narrow it to anything really genre specific, and part of that is just seeing how pissed off some people are when they think it's supposed to be part of a genre, but it doesn't match what they believe the genre is supposed to be. And I got to tell you, Lombardo gets the worst of that. He has some real prick followers who get pissed off if he's not duplicating Slayer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely got his support as well, but I feel bad for the guy, the way people give him shit for trying anything new.
Yeah, exactly. I can believe it. And the project is this in conjunction with the Satanic Temple, or is it a completely separate entity? Do you see the two together?
Well, I mean, it's hard to disentangle,
of course,
the things I do creatively from the things I do, activist wise, and I intentionally blend the two anyways because the activism is artistic to me in certain ways. I mean, in some ways, I feel like Satanism is an artistic movement, and that just blends in with our whole philosophy of viewing this non-theistically as a metaphorical construct. We don't believe in a literal Satan, but to us, like, the metaphorical Satan is just as powerful, you know, but that's indicative of how seriously we take art.
Yeah. And is this your first step into the music industry, or have you had, like, you know, dealings with it in the past?
I've worked on music for fun in the past, and I've even done live shows in the past for fun, and recording with Satanic Planet. Me and Shiva Honey, who's also on the album.
Yeah.
We worked on soundtracking Haxan, this old silent film from the 1920s about witchcraft and witch hunts. Really great film, but it was all musical on my end. You know, I wasn't doing any vocals or anything like that, and she was doing vocals. But it was actually a segment from our soundtracking of Haxan that formed the basis of the track Exorcism on our album. We just took a segment where, you know, she was doing her humming, singing kind of thing.
Good track.
This is kind of ethereal sound. And then with Satanic Planet, we added all these elements to it. And it turned into this. I'm really proud of how that one turned out, because it's like really low BPM.
Yeah.
But also incredibly intense and brutal.
How do you envisage people listening to your album? Sitting down with a glass of wine, getting in a dark room, candles, or what?
I think it kind of depends on the track sometimes. Like, you have the unbaptism track, and that was specifically made with unbaptism rituals in mind. And for that reason, when we were working on it, we considered, like, extending this track into, like, 10 minutes or whatever. But we decided to keep it more musical, more brief. You know, something people could listen to on repeated play. But that said, for the live shows, we're thinking some of these tracks, we might revise them, kind of remix them on the stage, and we might do an extended version of Unbaptism where we actually do live Unbaptisms on the stage.
So cool.
Because we want it to be kind of an immersive experience where people feel that they're part of an interactive congregation while they're there, rather than just passive attendance of a live show.
It's like Ghost, but for real.
Right.
So what are your musical influences? You know, when did you get into rock metal, and how important is it in your life?
I've loved industrial metal and industrial rock and avant music for a long time. So it's funny when I hear people comparing us to bands I really like, but I didn't think we sounded like, you know?
Like who?
Like when I see people saying, like, well, this really sounds like Skinny Puppy or Ogre to me. I'm thinking, like, I don't think it sounds anything like that. However, I love their you know, and that's very complimentary to me. But I feel like it's just, part of that just might be like, it's ingrained into my head that that's what good music is. So I can't say it wasn't influential, right?
Yeah, of course. Now, as a staunch atheist myself, I'm interested to know, in a nutshell, how did the Satanic Temple get started? I mean, initially, what were the thoughts and meanings behind it?
Well, my history with Satanism goes kind of way back. You know, I got really intrigued by what caused the Satanic Panic. You know, I was aware of the Satanic Panic when I was a kid. There were these reports of satanic cults murdering people, committing cannibalism, and being so effective at this that they couldn't find the bodies. You know, they had mobile crematoriums. There's no evidence of it, but that was just evidence that they were that effective, you know. And the stories were insane, but when you're a little kid, they carry some weight because you don't realize how irresponsible, you know, mainstream news and television adult authorities can be. And so, you know, at some point I started, you know, really researching this and trying to learn who the Satanists are, and really developing an affinity at the same time as I was being disabused of the notions that were fed to me by mainstream religious institutions and taking note of their corruption overall. So I kind of identified as a Satanist most of my adult life, but at the time of forming the Satanic Temple, there really wasn't a need to just declare ourselves Satanists, you know, and make ourselves public pariahs if it wasn't going to be for some cause, right? So that's why you see the politics surrounding the Satanic Temple. We organized for a purpose, right? And we were seeing the rise of the theocratic right in the United States, which has been happening for some time. People, I think, have the illusion that this was somehow new with Trump. It's been brewing for generations, and they've been chipping away at secularism for some time. And
absolutely.
now we're in a real dire state of affairs. And distressingly, some people look at us still like we're some kind of prank, even at the point where it looks as though Roe versus Wade, which federally makes abortions legal, a legal right, is about to be overturned in the U.S. And we're taking several steps backward as time goes on all the time. And Joe Biden coming into office hasn't remedied this at all, because Trump had assigned so many judges in his term.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed rewatching Hail Satan again this week. I'm sure my wife and kids who enjoyed it as well. And leading up to our chat, how important was that film in gaining you more traction and attention? And what was the membership like for the Satanic Temple now around the world?
Yeah, we've experienced nothing but growth from the very beginning, and significant growth too. We're coming upward of about 500,000 membership worldwide now, and the thing is that's also a product of this dire state of affairs of ours, fighting the theocrats. It makes it more obvious what our value is to people. It makes the idea of Satan as a counterbalance to this more palatable to more people. And I think Mike Pence can take a lot of the thanks for the growing numbers of Satanists that we're seeing now.
Yeah. And where is that incredible Baphomet statue right now?
In Salem, at our headquarters in Salem, Massachusetts. Yeah. And people can come and visit the monument.
Sit on the lap.
Yeah. There was kind of a horrific period of time before the election when the protests were going on. Black Lives Matter and Confederate memorials were being torn down. Where a bunch of conservative talking heads were posting these memes on social media saying, well, if you can tear down these monuments to American heritage and history, then we should be able to tear down this monument. It'll be a picture of the Baphomet monument. We were thinking, it's only a matter of time before some QAnon asshole comes and tries to do that. But so far, so good.
I mean, is it frustrating to you that people just don't get what you're doing, what you want to achieve? They just hear the word Satan and the wall comes up. How do you overcome those misconceptions?
I mean, it's a slow burn. Some people just don't want to hear it. They even if you tell them exactly where you're coming from, they're just going to decide at their convenience that you're lying because they don't want it to be that. They're so invested in the notion that they can determine right and wrong based entirely on symbolic cues and adherence to certain mythological narratives. People can hide their depravity behind a cross, and they've been doing it for centuries now. So that's a tough habit to break. But the more we go on, the more people do realize what we're up to. There are Christians who support our right to do as we do, and even in Arkansas, when we did our rally that you see at the end of Hail Satan, I was speaking at that podium, but before me, a couple of Christian ministers from Arkansas spoke on behalf of my message, because they don't want the government claiming what's sacred to them as just a tool to advance their political power. I mean, some Christians just simply aren't that dumb.
No. Is the shock value of the temple helping to put injustices under the spotlight? I mean, obviously your scenes with the Westboro Baptist Church in the film and stuff like that. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps, as well as it hurts. And there's always debate amongst the public. People always say, "Well, wouldn't you be better off if you called yourself something else?" As though this is arbitrary to us and not meaningful enough for us to stand by what we want to identify with. But beyond that, the idea that we would be better off, I don't think so. It would be less provocative, but it's not. I don't feel it's provocative just for provocation's sake. No. I feel it's important that people
definitely
think, that people think about revising what they think they know, and recognizing that these mythologies, these symbols can mean different things to different people. And I think if we can realize that about people in general, you'll be a more tolerant and understanding person overall. You can't just preconceived notions about what other people believe.
Totally agree. And with the Christians in the States being, shall we say, fanatical, what's the worst threat you've had? Obviously, in the film, we see you pulling on a bulletproof vest.
Oh, yeah. Well, we get death threats and emails written in all capital letters. And, sometimes we advance them to law enforcement and, we'll report them to Facebook, and Facebook will 100% of the time come back to us and tell us that no matter the gravity of the threat, even if it's a straight up death threat, it does not violate their terms of service. There hasn't been a time Facebook hasn't done that with us. People post publicly that they want to come burn down our headquarters or whatever. That's not a violation of terms of service either. Right. So there's that. And I always get the question, though, well, is it a credible threat? And it's like, well, I won't know until they come or don't,
I mean, with all these threats, how do you relax? I mean, what do you do in your, I can only imagine, limited spare time? Do you walk a dog, sip wine, films, floristry? What do you do to chill out?
I hang out with my cat. I love animals overall. Yeah. If I can visit animals, I'll do that. I'm going to stay away from the crowds, I think, from here on in, unless I'm doing live shows. I'm happy to do that, but I think overall I'm steering clear of people from now on.
Now, having watched The Family on Netflix about religion on the Hill in the U.S. government, do you think there'll ever be a separation of church and state? There was a time when I felt I had a grasp of, some kind of vague grasp, at least, of what the future is and which way things could fork off, what the most plausible directions were. I just don't feel that way anymore after Trump and after the pandemic in 2020 and things like that. I expected better of people in a pandemic scenario, right? And even when the pandemic happened, I was optimistic that people would change their behavior in regards to climate change and things like that, because they were finally shaken up and would realize that, world disasters can happen. This isn't just stuff where, these aren't just cinematic plots. Things can actually happen that shake you out of your protective bubble. Exactly. And you need to take action. Now I see just how few people actually changed any of their behavior during the pandemic, and then just gravitated towards the most absurd narratives about 5G vaccines and 5G antennas and masks and things like that, and how this was just this bizarre, QAnon conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So now I'm just thinking, are people, you would think the pending overturn of Roe versus Wade in the United States would be enough to wake people up, but it's still not. It's just still people are kind of ignorant to the theocratic threat facing us. It's the same with the UK. I mean, the UK is actually a secular nation according to the censuses, Yet the Prime Minister's come out and say we're a Christian nation.
Well, we're codified as a secular nation on paper. The United States is the most secular nation there is, and even the legal precedent says, when it comes to public expressions of religious belief and things like that, there's a long history that you would feel is unshakable, where it says, if you're going to allow religious expression for one group, you can't preference it over any other. So if you open up public grounds to displays, you open up public meetings with prayers or whatever, you can't discriminate against non-believers or alternative religions or whatever. And yet the Satanic Temple will go to court because we've been denied our ability to give that kind of a public expression where they've opened up the public grounds. And they'll find some facile way to dismiss our claim on a technicality or to otherwise allow, these government entities to preference one religion over another. Like, we asked to give an invocation before a city council meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona, where they always open up with a Christian prayer. And they put us on the schedule. Then they kicked us off the schedule, saying that we didn't have a substantial connection to the city of Scottsdale. They never had a requirement for a substantial connection. They didn't even define what a substantial connection is. And the city council was very publicly saying that they didn't want us to speak because we're Satanists. So it seems like this would be a real clear-cut case of discrimination. However, we brought it through the courts, and even on appeal, the determination was that we didn't prove beyond some kind of shadow of a reason of a doubt that discrimination was at play rather than just some kind of administration error or whatever.
Yeah.
Because nobody just, I mean, even though they came out on record and said they didn't want us to speak, the city administrator who actually disinvited us didn't do that. So, I mean, you would never see another religious group. You certainly wouldn't see a Christian religious group treated this way in the courts. And I think that's something people in the United States don't realize. They feel like the courts are neutral, the judges are professional, that there's certain metrics in the law that if you meet these certain standards and qualities, you're going to win your case, and it doesn't matter who you are. And that's just a myth. And it's more of a myth now that we have so many incompetent judges placed in there, especially by Trump.
I mean, do you think heavily Catholic Biden can help?
I think it's far better than Trump.
Of course.
But
anything
but
is.
I think far better still will be when we get over this notion that we have to elect politicians who grovel to religious institutions. And it's something that frustrates me even with secular people. They'll always give these excuses for the candidates by saying, well, they have to do that. They have to appeal to this. And it's like, well, they do because you let them. You insist that they have to, so you give them a pass. And you don't force them to make any hard choices, right? Because they know you'll accept it.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be greater pushback.
Yeah, of course. Now, you do many interviews, and I thank you for this one, but do you enjoy your TV appearances? I mean, do you enjoy the wind-up element of it, or do you relish those opportunities? I mean, especially on right-wing stations like Fox News, etc.
Well, I think those are a great opportunity. Some people actually get pissed that I even do those because they feel like I'm endorsing those characters or whatever. I was on Tucker Carlson twice, and Tucker Carlson's straight up piece of shit, and everybody knows that. I knew we were going to be. Yeah, I knew we were going to be. It wasn't going to be pleasant. But the fact of the matter is I can use their rhetoric against them, and it's not just a ploy. Like, I can rightfully speak the language of religious liberty and free speech. They like to uphold themselves as the defenders of religious liberty and the defenders of free speech, and yet they want to keep us out of public forums, and they haven't quite thought this through. So when I get on Fox News and I'm saying that this is what free speech looks like, and also hammering on the fact that it's not the government's place to dictate your religion to you. It's not the government's place to dictate what's appropriate form of expression and what is not. Those are conservative talking points. That's very good to people. And if they're intellectually honest in any way, they have some hard thinking to do. And that's why Tucker Carlson got so pissed off both times I was on, because I was hammering on his core values and upholding those as my own. But on the other side of that, you're going on a show where a guy is going to be doing everything he can to discredit you. He's leading the discussion. There's millions of viewers. You're only as good as your last performance. And if he makes a fool of you, you might never shake that off. So there's a lot of pressure going on Fox News, right? But it's also a great opportunity. But it's like that. It's a stressful thing. I won't lie about that. It's that can really induce some anxiety.
Really,
and also there's that kind of perpetual spiraling anxiety where it's like, I know I'm going to fuck up if I'm nervous about it, so I just got to chill out. And it's like trying to not think about the purple elephant or whatever.
Well, I mean, you're uber intelligent. You've got your facts straight. You've got it all there ready to go. You must have you've got an arsenal in your head ready to fire at them.
Yeah, and I expected better of Tucker Carlson at the time I was on, because at the time I was on, I honestly didn't know a whole lot about him, but I looked him up. And I saw these articles about how he has this record for just completely deflating politicians and destroying their careers and just demolishing people in debates and stuff like that. Like, this one's not going to be easy, And I got on, and he didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. And I thought, all right, that went well. And then he had me on a second time, and I thought, all right, he's really going to be prepared this time. And he fucked it all up again. And I was really happy about that.
Brilliant. Now, what's your opinion on metal icons turning to Christianity later in their life? It's almost like they want to repent their sins. I mean, I'm talking about people like Dave Mustaine, Tom Araya, Alice Cooper, and dare I say it, obviously after this week, David Ellefson. It's not what fans really want to see, is it?
It's not what I want to see. No, Alice Cooper, I guess, has always kind of been that way.
His father is a preacher, right?
Dave Mustaine always seemed like he was a little fucked up too. I don't know what's up with that guy, but yeah, I hear he's gone totally born again or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, and I don't know if this is the case with these guys, but sometimes it seems like cocaine is Jesus' best friend. Like, people get all strung out, and then when they're coming down, they feel the guilt really hard. And I've seen that happening with people too. And then,
that's it.
They just want to fall back on
somebody save me, somebody help me.
You're right. Yeah.
Now back to the band. I'm hoping this isn't just going to be a project, and you touched upon it earlier. What's the plans for the road?
Well, that's kind of what we're talking about right now. We were band manager and booking guy. We're doing some research, and the fact of the matter is we can't get booked to do any festivals now because everybody's catching up on what didn't play during the pandemic. So some of the booking opportunities, I think, that are, the preponderance, I think, of booking opportunities coming our way are from 2023, which doesn't bother me, but not to kind of announce anything too soon. But I do think there's some Satanic Temple specific events where we're going to rally in particular areas or whatever that we're going to look to do kind of one-off shows in the area, because we'll definitely be the home team, and I think that'll be a great way to kind of ease ourselves in as well. I think I'd like that better than supporting some huge act first.
I get that. Your own thing. I'm salivating at the idea of what you could do at your own shows. Have you got grand ideas in mind?
Yeah, I really want to be theatrical with this. I've already had this kind of nice mic stand constructed of inverted crosses, and we've gotten some props from some of the videos we've made and things like that, incorporate them in. Like I said, we were talking about doing the live unbaptisms, and I was talking to the guys, restructuring some of the songs quite a bit, really, just to make the live show entirely unique. Because personally, I've always disliked when I've seen a live show and the band will play their new album in the order that it's on the album, and just a straight rendition of exactly what they put out. I just kind of feel like that's boring, right?
You know what's next. And, you know what's coming. You want unpredictability.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about what kind of funky things we can throw in the live show. From cover songs to to ritual performances and theatrics, and
making it a unique experience, right?
Yeah, the live show itself should be a work of art. And even if you've heard every track, I think it would be great to put together a live show where somebody really wanted to hear the live version of this, because it's different enough, it's unique enough that they would port it.
It's going to sound great through a big PA system, that. It really will.
I've thought of that with some of the tracks, because some of them have such the great relentless looping quality that get this. You think about it in the setting of a large venue environment, just permeating everything, and I think it's really powerful.
Yeah. Now, it's not unusual for metal bands to have protests and threats at shows, thinking back to Ghost, Deicide, Marduk, Slayer, for example. Do you think you'll get the same treatment? I expect so.
Yeah, I hope so, especially when we go to Arkansas and I invite that dickhead senator, Rayford, he always rises to the bait, so I'm sure he'll try to round up protests and things like that.
Just send him some passes.
I'm feeling a bit slappy after all this lockdown, so it's other times I might have been hesitant and thinking, shit, I don't need this. Now I'm just thinking, bring it on, motherfuckers.
Exactly. And lastly, Lucien, with everything you've done and been involved in, what's the craziest thing you've heard about yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I think, if people really want to see crazy shit talked about me, there's some conspiracy theorists who have some grand ideas about who I am and what I do. One of those guys is named David Schroeder. I highly recommend his work if you're looking for absolute lunacy about, I think he has me having murdered Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia, who died back in, I don't even know now. It's been a little while now. But just all kinds of things. It's a new thing every day with this guy. He used to make videos on YouTube too, and I'm really disappointed I didn't download them all because all of a sudden they disappeared one day. But I'm hard pressed to think of the craziest thing I've heard. I'm all over the spectrum though, as far as the conspiracy theorists go, and it's kind of a reflection of their own baggage. Like I'm either a Jewish liberal funded by George Soros, or I'm a Nazi, a crypto-fascist trying to fool people into, these progressive campaigns, which I guess will ultimately, convert them into somehow into far-right radicalism or something like that.
Do you enjoy all that?
It's all over.
Do you enjoy that?
I gotta say, not really. Some of that's really disturbing because if I read some of the things people say about me, it's so extreme that if anybody actually believes it, right, they'd almost be obligated to do something about it. And that's what worries me.
Well, Lucien, thanks for joining me on the show today. A fascinating chat. Good luck with the album and, more importantly, the incredible work you do. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.